Hello, NBA fans. Welcome to a playoff edition of the NBA Outlet presented by OTGBasketball.com. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at OTGBasketball. Also, hit that subscribe button. I'm your host, Nick Fay. With me today, Jonathan Ebrahimi. How you doing, Jonathan?
Hey, Nick. It's good to be back. We got a lot of good second-round matchups to talk about, so it should be a good show.
Yeah, we got second-round matchups, and we got one Game 7 to talk about. That's what we're going to start with. Jazz, Clippers, Game 6 last night. Clippers get the win on the road. CP3 definitely did his thing. He did not want to lose. He was trying to get every foul call, every point he possibly could. What did you think about that game? Were you surprised the Jazz didn't win, or you expected the Clippers to give them a good fight?
To be honest, with everything that's going on with the Jazz this series, with the number of injuries and illnesses that they've had, I'm not surprised that the series is starting to take its toll. I mean, even to get two of their wins, they've needed some huge shots from Joe Johnson in clutch situations. I do think the Clippers are the better team, even without Blake Griffin. I think Chris Paul is the best player in the series. So I'm not too surprised, but I was worried for the Clippers. I wasn't sure if they had the right stuff to go into Utah, go into a hostile environment and pull out a win.
Yeah, especially, Austin Rivers coming in and starting, I think, made a difference. He had some big threes, obviously, like I mentioned, CP3. And you made a good point. The injuries are kind of catch up. Rudy Gobert's not 100%. I think you can see that out there. So that kind of hurts him a little bit. DeAndre's done his thing, and they've gotten some good minutes from Paul Pierce. So, I don't know how much you can expect out of him if they go to the next round, but, he's given them some good minutes in the last few games.
Yeah, I'm surprised he hasn't played a little bit more this season, but I guess, that one extra year just took a bigger toll on Paul than we expected, because he was a great player, the last few years, especially when he was in Washington. He kind of turned the clock back a little bit, but if the Clippers can get decent minutes out of him, I think they'll be okay in Game 7.
Yeah, I think, they were kind of smart reserving him, I guess, for the postseason. Obviously, he doesn't have a ton left in the tank, but he has some that, he can give you good minutes. He knows how to play basketball the right way, and he can hit big shots. And like you mentioned, go ahead, John.
I was just going to say he can give you a lot of minutes at the 4 as well because of his size.
Yeah, exactly.
He can play that stretch 4 position really well.
I think he's a lot better suited at the 4 at this point in his career. Like obviously lack of foot speed and stuff. So I think playing him at the 4 makes sense. But you mentioned the other guy that's kind of turned back the clock in this series, and that's Joe Johnson. You wrote a great article about him. He's been super clutch. He couldn't hit that clutch shot last night, but he's done a lot for them in this series. I think playing like 30 minutes a game, and you mentioned he hit the game winner early in the series. What have you thought about him?
Well, he's been amazing all series long. He's actually been the most clutch player in the entire playoffs. And he's been the most clutch player in the league for the last 10 years, which I thought was pretty interesting. But he's been incredible, and he's been exactly what the Jazz wanted from this summer. He's been a great leader for their team. He's hit a lot of big shots, obviously no bigger than in this series. And I think he's already earned every one of those $22 million that the Jazz gave him.
Yeah, and the one thing you got to enjoy about Joe Johnson, if you're a fan of the Jazz, is he wants the ball in the big situations. He's not scared of the moment. Like you said, in the last 10 years, he's probably been the most clutch player in the NBA. And it's funny, like being a Nets fan, I've seen him hit a ton of game winners and buzzer beaters. But a lot of people just didn't notice, I feel like, because of the contract talk. It was always like, oh, Joe Johnson's getting $25 million a year. Like, oh, he's so overpaid. And they didn't really take notice of what he was doing on the court.
Yeah, and especially when he was there was a lot of other big names there. So he kind of he became the forgotten man, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense too. And honestly, I would say Joe was probably the best player during that stretch for the Nets. So I've always appreciated him, and I always like to see him do well. So happy to see him do well in the playoffs. Who needs to step up for the Jazz and the Clippers in Game 7?
Well, if the Jazz are going to pull out this series, you're going to need a big game from a few guys. Gordon Hayward, Joe Johnston, and Rudy Gobert is going to have to put everything into it. I know he's not 100%, but he's going to have to be everything that DeAndre Jordan is and a little bit more for them to win that game.
Yeah, no, I agree with those guys. I also throw out there George Hill. I think George Hill needs to have
George Hill's been a great player for them this season.
Yeah, and he has the ability to kind of hit some of the tough shots when things don't go right, and make those plays in the pick and roll a little bit, and that's something they need because they got really stagnant last night when the Clippers turned up the defense.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see the way they come in and play under such a hostile environment, especially they're not a very seasoned playoff team, so it'll be interesting to see how this goes.
Exactly. Who needs to have a big game for Clippers in Game 7?
Unfortunately for the Clippers, it's going to have to be Chris Paul, and it's going to have to be DeAndre Jordan, of course. But the next guy to step up, I think, is probably JJ Redick or Jamal Crawford. They need better outside shooting to finish out this series. They've not been great this series, so if one of those two guys can step up and hit their shots, I think they'll be able to walk away with the win. They struggled in Game 6, but they still managed to win because, like you said, Chris Paul just went crazy. But if those two guys can step up, I think they'll be okay.
Yeah, I probably think we need like a 40-point game from Chris Paul, some huge game, DeAndre doing his thing. And like you said, one of the scorers to step up on the outside is that Jamal Crawford, JJ Redick, or Austin Rivers. One of those guys to have a big game and give him that extra scoring punch. Who do you have in Game 7?
I got to go with the Clippers. They're at home. They're a little bit more seasoned, a little bit more experienced. I like the Clippers.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Clippers. I think that was my original prediction, the Clippers in 7. So I'm going to stick with that. I like Chris Paul. You know, man, I just do not – the way he's been playing, the attitude he's had, his reaction to the post-game press conferences, everything about him in this series just tells me they're going to win Game 7 because of him.
Yeah, and you hate to see a player like him go out in the first round 2 years in a row. So hopefully they can pull out the win.
Yeah, because people give him unnecessary hate for getting knocked out in the first round, even though he's had a great series.
Yeah, well, I mean, your past kind of follows you, right?
Yep, exactly. So, but talking about these teams, whoever wins this series is going to go on and play the Warriors. So I ask you, do either of these teams stand a chance against the Warriors in the next round?
It would have been interesting to see the Clippers play them with Blake Griffin. If Blake Griffin's ready to go, or if he's able to play, they might have a chance. It's doubtful though. The Jazz actually played the Warriors really well during the regular season, so I mean they might take a game or two away from them, but I don't think either team's got a chance of taking them in the 7-game series.
Yeah, it's really tough to see either of these teams. I mean, like you said, maybe if Blake was healthy and the Clippers were just like really engaged and focused, they might have been able to compete with the Warriors, but the Jazz, like you said, will maybe pull out a game or two, but the Warriors are just too stacked. They just have too much talent on this team. They're just going to hit you in too many different ways, and they even got great play off the bench too. So it's going to be tough to see anybody really take anything away from the Warriors. Who would you rather see play the Warriors next round?
I'd probably go with the Clippers. Actually, you know what? I'm going to change that. I'm going to go with the Jazz. I think the Jazz would be able to try a few different things with them. The Warriors know the Clippers really well. They've played that team so many times. They've not really changed. They're the same team they were 3 years ago. So I'd actually like to see the Jazz because I think the Jazz might find something that exposes the Warriors, something that'll make the series a little bit more interesting.
And Gobert obviously is, an impact player in that series if he's healthy too. I would like to see the Jazz as well. And I think what they have is they can throw so many different looks at you. They have a lot of depth on this team, a lot of different guys with some different skill sets, smart basketball players. So I don't think they would, scare the Warriors, but I think they'd have some really competitive games. Moving on to the second round. So we got our Texas matchup, Spurs and Rockets. The Battle of Texas, this is going to be headlined James Harden versus Kawhi Leonard. That's, what the big hype is about. What are you excited to see in that matchup?
I'm excited to see what kind of defense James Harden's going to play because that's going to be the deciding factor in this series. I think Houston, believe it or not, has the firepower to keep up with San Antonio. But the difference maker is going to be the fact that one team star plays defense really well and the other one doesn't play defense at all.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. For me, I actually think Houston has more firepower than San Antonio. I think that,
offensively,
offensively, they just have so much pop, and the guys they bring off the bench, Eric Gordon, Nene, Lou Williams, they're all huge. And I think that's going to give them some ability against the Spurs. And the Spurs kind of had some offensive struggles in the first round. Obviously, Houston plays nowhere near the defense that Memphis plays, but they definitely can take some things away. It'll be interesting to see how they match up and will the Rockets play defense and will the Spurs turn up their offense, or they try to slow down the game?
Exactly. The other thing you got to think of is how many times D'Antoni and Poppovich have coached against each other in the playoffs, and D'Antoni's not been very successful against them. Yeah,
so he definitely has some extra juice heading into this, and it's tough to say. Those teams, just what did the Suns have a chance against the Spurs? Do we think that he should have won? He probably should have won maybe one of the series, but this year I think they have a good chance. I really do. I think this is going to be a great series. The one question mark I think for the Spurs too would be, what do they do with their bigs? They like to play two bigs, and when teams play two bigs, when OKC played two bigs last round, Houston was able to expose them easily.
Yeah, but I think the caliber of the bigs on San Antonio is completely different, and I think Pau Gasol is the type of guy who can really change a series, even though he's not going to have an expanded role.
But if you're James Harden, you're looking at Pau Gasol or David Lee, and you're like, I can attack these guys.
That's fair. You have to remember though, Pau Gasol is 7 feet, so he's still long, regardless of the fact he's not very athletic. He's still long, and he can still change a lot of shots. And then he's capable of stepping out and hitting a three on the other side, so he doesn't hurt their offense too much. He still keeps a lot of space there for Kawhi.
Yeah, I wouldn't be worried about him offensively. I think he can still do a thing. I think he lost a step defensively. He's always been a pretty solid shot blocker, like you said, with his length. But I think James Harden could maybe attack those two guys. It'll be interesting to see what they do. They're going to probably put a lot of focus on Harden. And like we mentioned, the bench matchup is going to be pretty big too. Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, because I think you're right in that Houston has a little bit more firepower, but we all know that San Antonio is greater than the sum of their parts, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, and like when I think about Houston, and you saw it was such a luxury last round, like James Harden had a bad game, they just give the ball to Eric Gordon or Lou Williams, and they can kind of create offense for themselves, especially Lou Williams. He can just, drop it from anywhere on the court.
Yeah, that was a huge pickup for them in the off or during the trade deadline. I like that pickup.
It just made them so much more deadly. If they didn't have Lou Williams, I don't know what I would really think about them going to the playoffs. I just think he adds another element to the whole team. Another guard who's going to be interesting to watch in the series is Tony Parker. Tony Parker had some big games in the first round. He also had some mediocre games too. So will he be the Tony Parker we're used to? Will he turn back the clock a little bit, show that speed burst, or will he kind of be slowed down and hurt by the pace of the Rockets?
I think he's going to have a hard time playing against Pat Beverly. If that's who's the primary defender on Tony Parker, I think he's going to have a real problem, because Beverly's big, strong point guard. He's young. He's athletic. Parker, like you said, he's still capable of those big games, but he has lost a step. He's not as quick as he used to be. So he might have a game or two where, he starts hitting, some of his jump shots and he puts together a lot of points, but I don't see him being a big difference maker in this series.
Yeah, and you mentioned Pat Beverly, and, Westbrook was like talking trash about him, but I saw the stats afterwards, and he did a pretty good job on him. I think he made like under 10 shots on 27 attempts, and he had like 5 turnovers against him. So Beverly definitely have his impact felt in the series. He's kind of their one defensive stopper. I think they'll probably throw Trevor Ariza on Kawhi and hope for the best. But Kawhi has been on another level.
Yeah, he's been incredible. He's been incredible all season long, but he's really taken his game to a next level in the playoffs.
Yeah, he's definitely Pop said out the other night, I don't know what you think about this quote, is, Kawhi's playing like the best player in the NBA.
Yeah, I read that. He's not the best player in the NBA, but it's good to have. I mean, what is Pop supposed to say? Right?
Yeah,
he kind of has to say that. He's not the best player in the NBA, but he is one of the top 3 players in the league. So
he's one of the few players in the league too that can match up with LeBron. Where you can go and say, Kawhi actually can do a good job on him defensively. A lot of players are defensive stoppers, but they'll face LeBron. He'll still drop 25 plus and 10 assists.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
It'll be interesting to see if Kawhi, if the Spurs and Cavs play each other in the finals, to see if Kawhi guards LeBron James for the full game.
I don't know if they will, because they were throwing Danny Green on James Harden, in that series. I mean, Danny Green on Mike Conley for a bit too, and they didn't throw Kawhi on him a ton, because I think they realized that they need him more offensively than they have in the past, especially when they rely on him a lot more, in isolation situations than we're used to in the Spurs.
Yeah, that's fair.
He did a lot by himself, and he hit a lot of tough shots. He had some nice clutch moments. And shout out to Memphis for playing a good series against the Spurs. They fought hard, and they definitely made it more interesting than a lot of people thought.
Yeah, that team has this amazing ability to make any series interesting. It doesn't matter what the odds are or how much is in their favor. That they have made every playoff series that they've been in interesting.
Yeah, and shout out to David Fizdale. I thought he did a great job as his first year as head coach in Memphis, especially with the injuries that they've had.
Yeah, they've had a few great coaches. Dave Yeager was a great coach. Lionel Hollins is a great coach. I kind of feel bad because the team seems a little too trigger happy on getting rid of their coaches, because I think the coaches they've had over the last few years have all been great. I'm surprised that they end up getting moved, but hopefully the same doesn't happen to Fizdale.
Yeah, I think it's more so the roster. They've always been that one piece short. They needed that other offensive weapon. They're hoping that was Chandler Parsons, but obviously Parsons is injured.
Yeah, I don't know how much longer Parsons has in the league. It doesn't look good.
Honestly, I thought that contract was so scary from the moment he signed it. I was kind of happy the Nets didn't pursue him at all because it was just like, it's such a big risk because there's a good chance he's going to be out for the year and there's a good chance that he's never going to be the same player.
Yeah, a lot of people were upset with Mark Cuban for not matching the offer from the Grizzlies. But, I mean, looking back, it seems like it was a smart decision.
Yeah, very smart decision. But back to the Spurs and the Rockets, who do you have in this series?
I've got to go with the Spurs. I like I said, I think the fact that Kawhi Leonard plays such great defense and James Harden doesn't play defense at all, or plays defense when he wants to, I think that's going to be the deciding factor, because you can't have your best player who's potentially on the court the entire game, putting in a half-ass effort on the defensive side.
Who's going to be the reason the Spurs win the series?
Kawhi. It'll be. This is Kawhi's team now. This team goes as far as Kawhi goes.
I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna make probably my first surprise pick of the year, and I'm gonna pick the Rockets in 7. I don't know why. Like, I just feel good about the Rockets. I feel like that offensive firepower. They just score so much points and they score so easily, and I think they'll be able to turn up enough defensively. And I'm a little bit questionable of the Spurs' other parts. They weren't great in the Memphis series, and they kind of, had some kinks in their armor, something we're not used to seeing, because I thought that Memphis series would be wrapped up a little bit quicker. Obviously, like we mentioned, Memphis is a great team, but I could definitely see Houston winning this in 7. I think James Harden, he's had big games against the Spurs, even with Kawhi, so he has the ability, and the Rockets do a good job of kind of taking your best defender off of James Harden. And they also have, like I mentioned, the other guys, Eric Gordon, Lou Williams, who can make plays, and it's not like the Spurs have the whole team is full of like lockdown defenders. There's guys that you can expose on that team. So I'm going to go with the Rockets in 7, and I'm going to go with James Harden as the reason why.
That's fair. I think when they're clicking, the Rockets can outscore any team in the NBA, even the Warriors. So
exactly,
when they've got it going, they can really do some damage. And San Antonio's defense wasn't great. I mean, Memphis scored over 100 points, in 2 or 3 of the games they played against San Antonio. And
with
Memphis,
questionable players they have to put out there. Some of the players that Memphis, no offense to them, they're not, great NBA starters, and they had to play big minutes in the playoffs, and they're able to still compete with the Spurs.
Yeah, they're certainly not out there for their offense.
Exactly. And then also, like, the one thing that's questionable about the Spurs, too, is, like, who's going to step up other than Kawhi? Like, LaMarcus Aldridge is supposed to be that second option, but he had some pretty bad games in the playoffs.
Yeah, he's struggling. I don't think LaMarcus is happy in San Antonio, but I find him to be kind of a weird guy. I don't think he's going to be happy anywhere. He wasn't happy in Portland because they weren't winning, and he moved to an organization to win, and now he's not the guy, and he's not happy. And yeah. I don't know. I don't know that the solution is there, but he definitely doesn't seem like the same player.
And he doesn't want to play center, and he's more suited to play center in the NBA than power forward nowadays. So just a weird fit. And he's kind of, like you said, I don't know if he's happy. There was some talk about the Spurs possibly training him last offseason. I don't know if that'll get reopened this year. And another point that I'll just throw out there for the Rockets is their bench. I was really close to pick. Actually, I'm going to change my reason why the Rockets are going to win is because of the bench, because of Nene, Eric Gordon, and Lou Williams. James Harden will do his thing, but I think these guys are what separates the Rockets, and it just gives them a luxury to have so many solid players on the team. Other than Harden, none of them are like amazing or great all-stars, but there's a lot of good players on this team.
Well, the good thing about having James Harden on the roster is that he actually lessens the burden for every other player on that roster. He takes on so much responsibility that they can focus on one aspect of the game, whether it's Eric Gordon and scoring or Pat Beverly and playing defense. They don't have to worry about setting other players up. They don't have to worry about taking the ball up. All they have to worry about is the one thing that they've been tasked with.
And that was my MVP argument for Harden. I don't know if anybody even listened to that show, but of our award show, Harris won Westbrook. I actually went with James Harden for the fact that I felt like Harden did a better job of making his teammates better this year and elevate the play of his team. But that's for another day. On to the Eastern Conference. So first matchup we're going to talk about, Cavs-Raptors. This is a rematch from last year's Eastern Conference Finals. What are your initial thoughts when you saw this matchup?
As a Raptor fan, it was not good. It was not good. I kind of feel bad for the Raptors because they played so hard towards the end of the season, especially with Kyle out, get that 3rd seed, and then right at the end of the season, Cleveland kind of forfeited the number 1 seed, which meant The Raptors were going to see Cleveland if they both won their first round series. And unfortunately for Toronto, they just don't have enough to stop LeBron, Kyrie, and Kevin Love yet. And whether or not there is a piece out there for Toronto to become a team that can compete with them realistically, I don't know, but they're not there yet.
Yeah, and I mean, there definitely were some question marks in the series against the Bucks. They even almost blew that game against the Bucks in Game 6. So Lowry and DeRozan obviously haven't been amazing. DeRozan kind of turned his stuff around, especially in the wins. But I would definitely have question marks. I feel pretty confident about the Cavs fan.
The problem with Toronto is that they don't seem to make adjustments, and I put that on the coaching staff. I said this last time I was on the podcast, but I really do believe that the coaching staff is responsible for a lot of those big losses against Milwaukee and last year when they made their run to the Eastern Conference Finals. A lot of those big losses fall on the coaching staff. The players go out and they execute the game plan.
Yeah, no, you mentioned that, and I've noticed that too. They rely too much on ISO ball and like putting so much on Lowry and DeRozan's shoulders. So definitely opening up a new offense. And you mentioned it, maybe a new coach in Toronto could be the new key. Maybe not even adding, a role player or two could help, but maybe a new coach could change things. But in the Cavs perspective, they showed some negatives in the Pacers series, even though it was a sweep. Their defense wasn't amazing. They definitely had some flashes where they played lockdown. LeBron showed he's still the best player in the NBA. Other than that, what are you looking for the Cavs?
They're going to try and get this series done quickly. I think the goal for them is to shoot as many threes as they can and just out offense the Raptors. I think they're realistically they're looking to get this series over in 4 or 5 games. I don't know if they'll be able to do that because the Raptors can cause them a lot of problems, but it'll be interesting. I know the Cavs' game plan for the first three rounds is a lot different from how they play in the finals, so it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I think the rest is a great point you made. LeBron's definitely looking for rest. He's been playing a ton of minutes in the playoffs. What do you think the Raptors are going to try to do to slow down LeBron?
They're going to throw a bunch of different looks at him. So they're probably going to start off with DeMarre Carroll. Once that starts to lose its effect, they'll probably switch over to PJ Tucker. But you can expect to see Pat Patterson, Serge Ibaka, Norman Powell. They're all going to give their best shot at stopping LeBron. So it's all about throwing different looks at him, see if something seems to work. But for the Raptors, outside of stopping him, they don't have much of a hope of winning this series, which is unfortunate.
Do you think they'll throw double teams at him, or they're going to try to just stay with the single look for most of the time?
I think they're going to try and stay to single coverage, but you'll definitely see some of those defensive settings that Casey used in 2011. If you remember, he was the defensive coordinator for the Mavs when they played the Heat in the finals. Mm-hmm. And he used a lot of double teams coming from that zone defense. So it's just all about trapping him, taking him out of those positions where he's successful and putting him in a position where he has to kind of do something he doesn't like.
Exactly. You're trying to make him do something he doesn't like or make somebody else beat you. And, when you play LeBron, obviously you do throw the double team. He's great at finding the open man. So it's also about your rotations. And it's playing defense for the full 24 seconds of the shot clock. And that's always important against the Cavs because they have so many great three-point shooters.
And everyone's got to be aware of them. Everyone's got to be aware of them.
Exactly. And you need to know which guy shoots a higher percentage. Am I going to go out on Kyle Korver or somebody else who's, shooting closer to the 30? You got to make the choice there.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. That reminds me of a play from the first round series against the Pacers where LeBron was coming on a breakaway and Monte Ellis ran over to cover Kyle Korver in the corner rather than try and stop LeBron at the basket. And a lot of people gave him a hard time because it looks like he's running out of the way. But if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. He's not going to jump up and block LeBron from dunking the ball, but at least he can go out and cover Kyle Korver in the corner.
Exactly. And, corner 3 for Kyle Korver is pretty easy. It's almost like a layup, especially if he's wide open. So that, that does make sense in some situation. That's why some coaches are okay with, LeBron scoring 40 or 50 as long as they're 2-pointers and you're hitting threes like the Warriors did when they beat the Cavs the first time in the championship. LeBron averaged like 40 plus that series, but they still won.
Yeah, I think that series was a little bit different. It's not we weren't seeing LeBron at his best because he was essentially playing 1 against 5.
Yeah. But, I'm just saying for, like an idea of a way you could play defense against the Cavs, some people are going to be, the 2-pointer or the 3-pointer, and that's going to be a big difference, especially against teams like the Cavs. when they have, so many guys that can shoot a high percentage. And we got some other good matchups in the series too. Obviously a lot of talk this year, Kyrie Irving and Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry had a great season. The injuries kind of slowed him down a bit, but there's always been talk, who's the better point guard in the East and whatnot. So are you excited to see this matchup?
Yeah, I think this one's going to go back and forth all season or all series long. I think it's a great matchup. Kyle has the edge defensively, but I don't think Kyrie gets enough credit for the defense he plays in the playoffs. I watched him last season in the finals guarding Steph Curry for stretches, and he did a really good job. So I don't think he gets the credit he deserves, but Kyle's definitely the better defender of the two. But they're both dynamic offensive point guards. They're two of the best scoring point guards in the NBA, so it'll just be a fun matchup to watch.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think that's an interesting point you make is that the way that certain players play defense in the playoffs and what they play in the regular season. It's like, what is this player's defensive potential and what's his defensive consistency?
Yeah, Kyrie definitely has the potential to play good. He's athletic, he's quick. He's a lot bigger than he looks when you're watching him on the court. He's about 6'2", 6'3". So I think the potential to be a good defender is just about having the want or the desire or the motivation to do it.
Exactly. I think it's a lot about focus, energy, and like you said, the want, desire to be a great defender. A lot of these great players have the ability to. It's just, choosing to conserve their energy. And also another good matchup, I think, is going to be Kevin Love and Serge Ibaka. Ibaka was huge in that Bucks series, and obviously Kevin Love is a big part of what the Cavs are trying to do in the playoffs.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing for the Cavs is that whenever Kevin Love is on the floor, he becomes a defensive liability, and especially for the Raptors, they scored so many of their points in the paint against the Bucks. If Kevin Love is their primary defender on the inside, they're going to probably be licking their lips at that.
Yeah, that's true. Like we mentioned in the Spurs in Houston, like you're looking to expose a big, and Love could be that big. So I'll definitely be interested in that. And I am interested to see how Serge does because I like the way he played. And, if Lowry and DeRozan play consistently better in the series and Ibaka plays great, it gives the Raptors a lot better chance.
Yeah, he's playing really well. And I think now that he's back on a winning team and he's got a little bit more motivation to perform, I think he's really stepped up.
And he's bringing some extra energy, and he has some nice versatility. He can play that small ball 5 center, and he still has, the ability to move around well. So,
and he can guard some perimeter players. He's not
he's not scared of anybody.
Yeah.
Especially with the shot blocking ability. He was able to scare Giannis, and like if you're going to scare, a tower like that, then you're going to probably scare a few players that are in the league. What do you think about Valanciunas in this series? Do you think he could have a bigger part? He came off the bench later on in the Bucks series. Like, he hasn't been impressive this year. Do you think this could be a series where he could step up?
I would like to think so because I think he's a really talented player. I don't think he gets the looks that he needs. I don't think he gets the ball in places where he needs to get the ball. I think he could be effective if the game plan was built around him a little bit more and the ball was taken out of Kyle and DeMar's hands just a little bit, just to give the other teams another person to guard consistently. But with the coaching staff that they have right now, it doesn't seem like they trust them. So I'm not 100% sure if we'll see much of Valanciunas in the second round.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he can keep himself on the floor and play well and stuff because they obviously could use his big body against someone like Tristan Thompson to kind of rebound and have a presence inside.
Yeah, and he's long, and so he'll keep LeBron away from the rim, or at least take up some space in the paint.
Exactly, clog up the paint. When you're that big, that's what you can do at the minimum. But who's your series pick for this? Who's the reason why you're picking them too?
I think the Cavs are going to win in 5 or 6 games. It'll probably depend on LeBron James. It always does with this team that, if he doesn't play, the team loses. If he plays, they're NBA champions. So it'll kind of go the way LeBron wants it to go.
Yeah, no, I'm going to go with that too. I'm going to go with the Cavs in 5, and I'm going to go with the reason why is LeBron. And I think the bigger picture, LeBron realizes that they want to handle this series quick. They need the rest. That he had to play a lot of minutes this season. The Warriors are probably, he knows they're probably a more talented team, so they're going to have to play harder than them if they want to beat them in the finals. And it all starts planning now.
Yep, you're exactly right.
So, but on to, a series that's going to have plenty of bad blood, and that's Celtics and Wizards. this is what we expected. The second round in the East and even, the second round in the West, we don't know exactly yet, but they both are looking like an idea of what we thought they'd be earlier in the season. Celtics and Wizards should be a lot of fun. Who showed you more in round one? Who impressed you more, the Celtics or the Wizards?
To be completely honest, I'm going to say the Celtics, just from the standpoint that team really rallied around Isaiah, with him going through everything that he went through with his sister. They really rallied around him. They picked each other up, and they were able to pull themselves out of that 2-0 hole. I think for a young team to be able to respond to adversity that way, that really impressed me. I'm not taking anything away from the Wizards. They impressed me as well. They're a great team, and that backcourt is just electric. But the way Boston kind of fought through adversity, they fought against a couple of very experienced playoff players in Dwayne Wade and Jimmy Butler, and I was impressed with their ability to kind of fight back and not just throw in the towel.
Yeah, winning 4 straight games in the playoffs is definitely a tough task. Especially when you lost the first 2 at home, they get 2 road wins. Definitely impressive. I guess I'd probably agree the Celtics are more impressive as a team, but I think John Wall was the most impressive thing out of both these teams in round one. I think he keeps, letting more people know how great he really is. 40-plus points yesterday, I think 8 assists and 4 steals and a Game 6 win. And he called it, I guess, to Julio Jones before the game. So I like what I've seen from John Wall, and Bradley Beal's had some big games. But I think the Celtics, like you said, as a team, probably maybe showed a little bit more the resilience-ness, the bounce back, the emotional state that Isaiah Thomas is in. So that was impressive. But the Wizards also, I think, were impressive too. But what are you looking for in the series? What do you think is the big matchup? John Wall, Isaiah Thomas, and the backcourt matchup with Avery Bradley and Bradley Beal too?
The backcourt matchup is going to be important, but I think this series is going to be decided by who else steps up, who in the front court is going to step up, who's going to be that 3rd or 4th player that puts together 2 or 3 big games for either team. We know what to expect from John Wall. We know what to expect from Isaiah Thomas. Same goes with Avery Bradley and Bradley Beal. All going to play well. We know they are. The Celtics can throw a few different looks at that backcourt. Jay Crowder will probably get some minutes at the 2 defending Beal. Avery Bradley's probably going to play. What
do they do? What do the Celtics do with Isaiah Thomas on defense?
I don't have the answer to that, but I can tell you that Brad Stevens will find a way to hide him. They have to. Whether they switch to a zone and just kind of have Isaiah play the passing lanes, I don't know if that's the answer, but Brad Stevens is the best coach in the NBA. He's right up there with Pop and Doc Rivers. I think he'll find a way to make it work. But you're right, it's going to be tough, especially with so much firepower at the 2 guard positions.
Yeah, and I mean, they have size too. What are they going to try to put him on Otto Porter? Otto Porter's got good size and length. He's improved his game, and he's shooting a good percentage from 3. So, obviously you can't put him on John Wall. There's no chance there. Bradley Beal, same thing. Both guys are going to expose him. Markieff Morris does enough that you can't hide him on him, and Gortat's too big. So that'll be the task for Brad Stevens in the first round. What are they going to do? Who are they going to put on him? And I think in the past, Wizards have ran with Bradley Beal on Isaiah Thomas, if I'm not mistaken.
That does make a little bit more sense. He's a big body, takes away, obstructs his view, takes away what he wants to do. It'll be interesting how they play that. When Avery Bradley's on the floor, it's basically like the Celtics are running with 2 point guards because Avery Bradley's 6'2", mm-hmm. So he doesn't. They really do lack a lot of size when those 2 guys are on the court together. The unfortunate thing is Avery Bradley's probably their best perimeter defender.
Yeah, and one thing with Bradley to keep an eye on is earlier in the series, he wasn't exactly great, but the last 2 games he really picked it up, especially, give him that extra scoring option. He needs to be that, I guess, that number 2 or number 3 option that gives him the 20 points, the 18 points that they need. Because if the Wizards do try to shut down Isaiah Thomas, someone else needs to step up. That could be, like I said, Avery Bradley or someone like Al Horford.
Yeah, and Al Horford's really going to have to play well in this series, I think. He didn't really have the best series against
the Bulls.
The Bulls. Sorry.
It's okay.
And he didn't really have the best series against the Bulls, and he's got to be one of those guys that steps up and gives them a lot of good productive minutes.
Yeah, he was kind of inconsistent. He had some big games in the series, but he also had some games where you didn't know he was there, and Robin Lopez abused him on the boards. So I think that's an area for Gortat, somebody who struggled really bad in the previous series against um, the Hawks. And so it'll be an interesting matchup. Who's going to step up, Gortat or Horford? Can Gortat make his presence felt? Another thing for the Wizards, too, is going to be, can they play defense without fouling, which was a big issue for them against the Hawks.
And Isaiah Thomas is going to be drawing a lot of fouls. He's going to be looking to draw a lot of fouls.
Exactly. And it's tough not to foul Isaiah Thomas. I know Fred Hoiberg was talking about him palming the ball and whatever, but, he's smaller, so it just makes him a little bit harder to defend. And he's able to, kind of get underneath you when you're defending him because some of the players are so much bigger than him, and he's just able to get up under them and, just throw his arms up and get the foul call. And I don't think that's, a negative towards the game. I think that's a skill. To draw fouls is a positive for your team.
Absolutely.
So it's going to be a fun series to watch. Boston, another thing for Boston will be interesting, what bench shows up for them. Are they going to get their good bench that they had all year? And for Washington, who can step up on that bench is, Brandon Jennings, Bojan Bogdanovic, Jason Smith. They all need to play huge if the Wizards want to win the series.
It's definitely the deeper team. And if they can turn Washington into a jump shooting team, I think they can beat them.
Yeah, that's what they're going to try to do. But Washington has some ability to hit jump shots with Bradley Beal and Otto Porter. Both guys shoot a good percentage from three. And John Wall himself actually shot, I think, over 50% from three in the first round. Obviously, we don't expect it to, keep up for the whole playoffs, but something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what do you think is going to be, the key matchup in this series that's going to be the game changer?
I think the coaching is going to be the game changer. Actually, I don't think it's going to be a player matchup. I think it's going to be how each coach responds to makes. Brad Stevens, like I said earlier, in my opinion, is one of the best coaches in the NBA, and I think he's one of the best at making adjustments. So it'll be interesting to see how Scott Brooks kind of counters that with what he's going to do on his side, how he's going to match up players in the backcourt. I think Brad Stevens is going to have to pick a few different players to defend John Wall. I don't think it's going to be a one-person job, and we're just going to have to see how Scott Brooks is going to respond to that and put John Wall in a position to be as successful as possible.
Yeah, and you mentioned, I agree, Brad Stevens is one of the best coaches in the NBA, and he'll win a Coach of the Year in one of these seasons. And Scott Brooks, on the other hand, it's going to be interesting for him matchup-wise because, I forgot to mention Kelly Oubre Jr., and he kind of gives him some versatility. And do the Wizards want to play small like they did a little bit against the Hawks, or do they want to, play their big? So it'll be interesting to see. It'll also be interesting to see if the Wizards get back Jan Mahimni, and that would kind of give them another rim protector presence inside where Gortat has been having foul issues and it doesn't have the quickest feet.
Yeah, they don't need too much offense from their front court because of how much their backcourt does and how good they are at putting players in a position to succeed. And Jan Mahimi, he really gives them a lot defensively. A nice bit of rim protection as well. Keep Isaiah Thomas away from the basket, so it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for the series. I'm also excited to see, are we going to see a fight? How many technicals are we going to see? John Wall does not like these guys, So who's your pick to win the series?
I think I'm going to go with the Celtics in 7 games. I think that'll be my pick. I think the home court advantage is going to be the decider in this one.
Yeah, I know, the home court, it scares me a little bit, but I'm going to go with the Wizards. I like what I've seen from John Wall. I like this team. I have some question marks about the Celtics with their, lack of rebounding inside, and also what are they going to do offensively if Isaiah Thomas gets shut down. So I'm feeling pretty good about the Wizards and John Wall. Who do you think? Who's the reason why the Celtics will win?
I think it'll be Brad Stevens. I really do. The way he coaches, he always seems to find a way to be successful. Even when they played Cleveland in the first round, 2 years ago, even though they got swept, they found a way to make those games competitive. So I think Stevens will find a way to slow down Wall, and I think that'll be the deciding factor.
For me, I think it's going to be John Wall is the reason why, and I don't think they're going to be able to stop him because I think Wall has some of that ability that you see in a LeBron and a Russell Westbrook where they have the ability to get the ball in the fast break or just make a play to nothing just because they're so athletically gifted. They can just get inside and there's really nothing you can do without fouling him. And I think John Wall, the way he's able to take a made shot and turn it into a fast break and just dunk on the other team, and they like almost didn't have a chance. I don't know if you saw any of the highlights, the one behind the back and then like the poster he had. It's just like he's so dynamic, and I think there's not going to really be much to stop him in the Celtics.
I think end-to-end, John Wall might be one of the fastest players in the NBA.
I'd put my money that he's the fastest, to be honest. With the ball, he just, he's so dynamic too, and like he's able to do some like nice moves that a lot of guys can't do at that speed.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he does in this series.
Who do you think has the best chance of D'ing him up on the Celtics?
Avery Bradley. I think Avery Bradley or Jay Crowder, but I don't know that Jay Crowder has the lateral quickness. So I think Avery Bradley is probably my best bet.
Crowder, I would agree. I think like he has the size and the toughness to do it, but his lateral quickness won't be there. Bradley, I think, is quick enough. I think John Wall might be a little bit stronger than him, so that'll be interesting to see if you can keep up with that. I don't know if the Celtics will try to do something crazy because Brad Stevens, he's willing to try anything. I think Jaylen Brown would be an interesting matchup because he's probably the most athletic guy on the Celtics team.
And he's a good perimeter defender, so it'll be interesting as well. But I don't know if they want to count on a rookie.
Yeah. But I wouldn't expect a big role from him, but just maybe a few minutes here and there. I think, though, like you pointed out about what the Raptors try to do to LeBron, throwing multiple looks at a player is probably one of the better things to do because they just can't get comfortable because every guy's going to attack him in a little bit different way.
Yep.
But that wraps it up for today. So our picks, our second round, even though we don't know the Jazz or Clippers who won, we both are going to probably go with the Warriors if that series happens. You went with the Spurs in 7. I went with the Rockets in 7. You went with the Cavs in 5 or 6. I went with the Cavs in 5. And you went with Celtics in 7. I went with Wizards in 7. So some disagreement here. It'll be interesting playoff. And I think this is like a more, we don't know what's going to happen. The first round was somewhat predictable. The second round definitely has some question marks, and it'll be nice to see some, surprises.
Exciting, and there's going to be a lot of good basketball at least.
And this is kind of where people start to make their names. Obviously first round wins are nice, but second rounds, getting to the conference finals is what really matters and getting that chance at that championship.
And the deeper these players go, the more confidence they get, right? So it'll be interesting to see how it picks guys up.
Exactly, especially if they had a big first round, they're getting into the second round. Even in like I even think sometimes having a big game 1 can really set a tone for a series and help you with your confidence.
Yeah, I agree. That's always big.
But that wraps it up for today. As always, thank you guys for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and let us know what you think on Twitter at OTG Basketball. And Jonathan, thanks for hopping on.
Always a pleasure. Thanks again.